Bobby, welcome. I know. No, so nice to see you back. So nice to see you, Saya. Uh,
Hello, Sandra.
hello. So nice, so nice, so nice. Okay, for those that are coming in just now, I hope you had a good conversation. We wanted to make a little a frame of the invitation we did and the invitation that we're asking now. Uh, and we hope this is just volume one from having conversations with Alia about Swaro. We decided for this time to focus on the story and how Swaro became and how Swaro became alive, and also as an invitation for us to dare to allow that calling and that voice in the space, um, and and maybe to make this space more as an inspiration for our own cause and our own possible best version of us. And with that, so we're going to have a conversation with Alia, where she's going to share her story. She's going to also share the frame of a Swaro, and then we'll get the chance to have some questions and learn more about it. So if you're ready, we will start. And I hope you had, maybe you can put on the chat if you had a good conversation coming up, and if you're ready to awake your own best version of yourself, your calling. And okay. Well, I was saying that I am very humble and very happy to introduce you to Alia, for her story really inspired me, and I could still see how beautiful it is when somebody dares to follow their call. And with that, well, Alia, maybe you can introduce yourself and share a little bit about like looking back, who you are, and can you share a little bit of your journey and some hints at that led you see the future and what you meant to step in, what inner and outer shifts guided your transition from where you thought you should be, that you thought you should be, to where you were and where you're hitting right now. And the mic is yours.
Thank you, Sandra. Yeah, thank you. And thank you for the beautiful introduction and just calling in the space. And for the honor of being here. Yeah, so while you've all seen a bit of a description, but the origins for me, I growing up was really obsessed with figuring out how could there be a proactive way of meeting human rights and accomplishing, protecting human rights. And for a while, I was studying. Initially, I was studying human rights law and studying, patterns in human rights violations, really in many different contexts, noticing these threads, these common patterns, really like replicating. And this, I guess, in a way, this state of observation really started then and served all the way through, which is this, whether on the most spiritual side, you could say looking for the signs, divine signs, but even just agnostically, like just cultivating a state of observation where you truly are noticing the details and where there are threads and patterns. So I began doing that in human rights law studies. And at one point, I went to, my family is of mixed background, and my mother is actually, her father's Jewish, Ukrainian Jewish. Her mother's we've got Argentinian, and then my father is Palestinian, and he grew up. He was born and raised in the refugee camp Shatila in Lebanon. And at one point in the middle of my studies of human rights, I went back to Palestine to interview my grandfather. It was actually the last time that I was with him, and interviewing him about his life, just recording it. And so I was asking him all these questions, and then he afterwards kind of turned to me, and he had 14 children, and all raised in the refugee camp, and so many grandchildren. So he was focusing on me, like, well, tell me about yourself. Like, what are you doing? What do you want to do with your life? And I told him, I was studying human rights law, and like human rights work is what I was talking about. And as I was talking, his face was kind of like turning to be this like incredulous, like disturbed. Actually, it was as if I was saying something oppressive. It didn't match. I thought like there must be language, like a translation issue or something. Like I truly thought like he couldn't be getting what I'm saying. And I finally realized like he was looking at me like I was saying that I wanted to exploit him or belittle him or dehumanize him. And he's a beautiful person, musician, and it wasn't that he doesn't believe in human rights. It was that took me a while to realize this. But it was that his experience of being at the receiving end of aid and humanitarian efforts was the experience of feeling that his perspective was not valued. It was not solicited. He did feel exploited. He felt dehumanized and reduced down to his needs, which were, exacerbated by the situation, as opposed to, being engaged with dignity. And so I realized over time that his perspective represented so many others who are at the, end beneficiary, quote unquote, side of aid, of humanitarian work and development, human rights work, and I felt even more convicted. It took me a while to get back full loop, but I felt even more convicted in a desire to generate a infrastructure that actually reflects that dignity and empowers that state, that to say like you are not only worthy of having your voice heard and being, treated in this way, but actually your contribution is essential. And at this point, truly our survival as a species depends on the contributions, the harnessing of each of the assets, the mapping and harnessing of that within each of us, especially those with closest to the issues that we're aiming to solve for. So anyway, I actually left I left human rights law. I felt like I was seeing that everything was very retroactive. Career paths that had been laid out were very much like the best I could hope for was, 10 years later, trials in Arusha were being held for the genocide a decade before, and that was like the pinnacle of that career path. And it just didn't feel good enough. It felt like we needed to be more proactive than that, especially being able to see the patterns replicating. That we're able to note patterns, and if we can note them, there's power in that. There's actionable sequencing that's possible. And so I ended up going to India for a few months. I had been studying with a Lakota woman in Seattle, and then anyway, it's a longer story there, but I dove into yoga and meditation and really just clearing the slate. It was all practices around like clearing and focus and cultivating more of a power of observation. And after some time, then I got a call from somebody who was a mentor of mine at the time. She was working at Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and she said that they needed someone like 2 weeks ago. They were really needing some help in this performance partnership, which was basically a review. You've all probably somewhat familiar, but this process of assessing how people are doing. And it was just a 3-month body of work initially before I went on to work there full time. But this assignment, I just arrived there from the ashram, very culture shocked, but both from what I had been doing, but also just being completely new to this inside perspective of the world's largest philanthropic organization, which in very much I learned became like a mirror for the larger development infrastructure. And so I had this unique lens where I was sitting there looking at these org charts, because the performance partnership, it was a cross-cutting. I was going to be sitting in, and I did sit in on meetings in all of these different teams. And just as a little background, for anyone who's not familiar, the Gates Foundation in particular has these 4 divisions. They've got, global development, global health, global policy and advocacy, and US programs. And then there are teams within those. And then there are sub-teams within those. And this is hundreds of, I think at the time it was 120, but there were these essentially like family trees, you could see from the org chart perspective. But what I found when I was sitting in on these meetings, and I was really a fly on the wall, just waiting for my moment to speak, I would hear what one person or one team was searching for, or brainstorming around, was exactly what another person in another team was either doing or had done, or was in the process. Like there were these missing pieces that each other had. And at the time I felt like this is too obvious, and who am I to be like, oh, did you know that? But but it kept happening, and it kept happening over and over and over again. And then, at one point I was sitting at my desk, and there was a day really that there were a number of occurrences that really brought the initial idea of Swaro to me. But I was sitting there, and I was remembering this story from a professor, Dr. Ruth White, who was at Seattle University, where I had been in school. She was an international social welfare professor, and she's Jamaican, and she also grew up on the side of aid where she was experiencing, organizations would come in building houses, and oftentimes, they'd be building these beautiful houses that were supposedly, better than their cinder block houses, but then they blow down, in the hurricane winds in the following years. And the community would kind of laugh on the sidelines, like, if only they would ask what we actually, want and need. And anyway, she told these stories, but this is a little bit of an aside. She really, that day in the course, she told a story of going to Njiro, Uganda, to set up a women's reproductive health clinic. And when she got there, the first thing that she did was call a meeting with all of the nonprofit organizations who are currently working in that relatively small region. And there were over 10 organizations, and there were organizations in clean water. There were, malaria, education, maternal child health, all of these seemingly different sectors that operate as such. They all got in the same meeting, and she found that none of them had actually ever met each other. This was the very first time that they were meeting each other. And this had been, it was like over 10 years that they had been working there for a really long time. And so the point of her story was really to just state the severity really of the silos. And that's what I saw there at the Gates Foundation as well. And I'll pause here because there's much more. This is just the first part, but Sandra,
No,
go
and
ahead.
it's so beautiful because I recognize so many people that we call it catalytic approaches, catalyzation or nurturing what's already there. But I would like to go from when you recognize this disconnections and the silos work, and the moment of in space you were already observing so many beautiful, passionate, beautiful efforts, but happening isolated. And also the role of the philanthropy. What have you learned about overcoming this disconnection, and when between the silos, and when Swaro came alive, where you saw like, oh, this is so much needed. And I think what is so exciting for this group is when we have the version 2 and we have Swaro as an algorithm, how much this can also help us, because I think you find here a bunch of people that understand and that I really see the beauty of and the need to make that connection, and what technology can help. And maybe you can share a little bit of that, and maybe also from your personal way, the magical call when you felt that this is too ambitious, this is too big, and how Swaro came back to you and came back to you, and where you are right
Okay. Yeah. It's always a challenge to do the short versions of stories. But thank you. I know everyone here already understands the need for us to work together. I When I noticed the call, it was that same day where I was recalling that story, and then from there I went to this lunch and learn. It's like at the Gates Foundation they have these invitations, amazing people that will come and you go to lunch and listen. But there was a woman, Agnes Benewahu, and she was the Minister of Health in Rwanda at the time, and she had experienced these unprecedented leaps in health outcomes, and she was brought to speak to how she thought it was possible, or how it had happened. And she said that from one end there was coming out of the genocide, people were radically open to something new, but because of that, they decided that rather than usually where the ministries of the government would meet, quarterly, they decided to meet weekly. So she said the first thing was this cross-sector awareness that they were meeting with each other every single week and able to piggyback on efforts, whether it was like, delivery of something, or they were in the know with each other. But the second was this piece of a real-time feedback loop. And she just very simply had office hours that were it was like 3 hours every Wednesday. She would sit on something very basic like an AOL forum, and invite anyone at any internet cafe to come and to answer any questions she asked, like, did you receive these vaccines? Or also just bring up whatever it was that was important to them. And just through this very simple method, she credited like so much. She was able to clean up a lot of corruption, identify it, and be in touch and like responsive in real time with what was needed. And so when I got back to my desk, there was this, there was all of this was kind of formulating, and then I'll tell 2 short stories because it really does come to, there's no skipping them really in answering your question. But so I was sitting there, and on this internal, like intranet, kind of like Facebook for within an organization, the director of strategy at the time, she had a post that said, she said, I was just walking with the CEO and we were talking, and we realized that these terms that we use all the time to define our strategy, we had different definitions for them, and subtle but profound. And so she ends up writing what they landed on as their new definitions to these like 4 key terms, that those with a little variation, I was sitting there and I was imagining all of the work of these different org charts, these different teams through the lens of these terms. And suddenly I started to see how how you could actually organize the connections and make them visible, you know, even in an actionable way, and to understand, like, you know, what one person is looking for is what one person is doing, what one person is aspiring to as their overall goal is what one person needs as a milestone in order to get there, and just like starting to have this like whoa aha moment. And then I went to another meeting, and this is all the same day. So I went to another meeting, and it was this man Phil Borges, who's a photographer, and he was sharing his work called Stirring the Fire. And it was a series of portraits of women. He was a photographer who would exchange, you know, getting to go to remote places for photography of the nonprofit's work. And so he did these portraits, and it would be, you know, a stunning photo next to just a brief story about that person. And there were two that stood out to me and kind of solidified this idea of Swaro. There was this girl who was from Willowa, Peru, very small town, and she was unable to attend school because she was tasked with because, well, in that town there are very high rates of maternal mortality, and it was very common for girls to be raising their younger siblings, baby siblings, and unable to attend school because of that. And so he told that story and told how she was representing the majority of the girls her age. And then there was another story of a girl in Tanzania, and it's this kind of like more cliche story we hear, the stereotype of like that she was unable to attend school because she was tasked with collecting firewood and water, and that would take up the bulk of the day. And so for a moment I was just thinking of, like, I had been thinking about girls' education because it's of course a huge opportunity to have profound, you know, catalytic impact. But just if you took girls' education, that kind of desired outcome, and you were to look at it in both locations, you could, you know, have a school that's operating and you could staff it and everything. But in Willowa, Peru, you're not going to get girls' education until you also address maternal health and raise the maternal mortality, lower the maternal mortality rates, or, you know, do economic development for a child care facility or whatever it is. But these are not only are they related, but until you address that, doesn't matter how many schools you build. And so there's this intrinsic connection to the successes of these seemingly disparate sectors that, when made clear, make the partnerships needed very clear as well. And so then you take that same thing over Tanzania, and it's like, instead of maternal health, maybe you're looking at who's currently building wells in this area. You know, how can we get clean water that's local? How can we have, you know, dung cow bricks instead of firewood, or economic diversification, or what's the pathway to this desired outcome? And then looking at, like, what are the assets that are there already as well. So anyway, coming back, I had really this download of Swaro. There's more, but without getting into it all, it was all there more or less in that moment. And then I decided to kind of turn it into a research question of what does it take for collaboration to truly be successful? And that was what drove me over the next years of being there. And every time that I would, this is what, Sandra, you were speaking to, like, every time that I would kind of put it aside, like, this is too ambitious, it would just come straight back. And I think that I know I haven't really shared too much about Swaro at this time, but I see the profound potential and need for it, and it's very much rooted in what these experiences showed me. But yeah, I guess I could speak to just really recent, and to bring it back to this theme of the calling, you know, and like the part that scares you being oftentimes still what you have to move toward. I finally was I experienced some health issues, and I at one point I tore an artery going to my brain a few days after giving birth. It's like very personal, but I was in the hospital. It was very likely I wasn't going to make it through. It was very unknown. And I was having this moment of like taking stock, like, okay, it's like this distilling moment. And what was there was like this prayer to be there for my children. But then on the other side, I found myself wondering, did I leave enough notes in place for Swaro that someone else could keep, like, bring it into full fruition? And it was this like sobering clarity that finally helped me get my ego out of the way, where I kept, being stuck in this, who am I to think I can, do this and change this, or, have an infrastructure shift this profound. But that moment told me that even at the, in considering being out of the picture ego wise, the importance of something else like greater than myself, that I'm here to take as far as I can, and I'm very committed to that. So anyway, it's all shortened.
And maybe before we start to make some to share a little, I know that right now, like the algorithm you're still looking, or you're still in the process to finalize it. So but maybe we can share a little bit more about the role on how social media, how all, like, even the things that we're using, are very just transactional, but are not putting all the dots together, and how Swaro, if we dream it for something for all of us and for our work, because I know some of the people here have created efforts of collaborative labs and catalytic approaches, but it takes so much effort and so much resources. What if there is, or when does an algorithm that is also based with love and compassion and bringing all of the other things that normally are not? And if you share a little bit about, and maybe we can have a ending of dreaming Swaro together, because it will help us all in our work and in our visions.
Thank you. Yeah. And I can say the algorithm, it's all finalized. The wireframes are all there, but we're just, we're fundraising to build it right now. So it's a bit proprietary, but I can still share this piece. I think that you're speaking to is that there is this unrequited care, I feel, in people right now. There's Swaro, it's written in the description, but Swaro is really rooted on this idea that compassion is like our greatest untapped resource. And if you can make it convenient, actually, amidst busy lives, to plug in and mobilize, and uniquely match, strengths with what's needed, that there could be as profound of a uptake as we've seen with some of these other social media platforms. And I think that right now, we see the energy of compassion. There's this, when from everyday people, where there's almost a response of like compassion atrophy or something, where instead of being able to have it move them to do something, like it's getting often stuck in like a post, and that's kind of like, okay, a social media post, it's great, it's important in it, and but the tools to actually turn that compassion into collective action, and in a way that can fit into our busy lives, that's what is needed, and that's really what Swaro is focused on. And yeah, I would say, just very briefly, to speak to just in like 2-3 minutes, what Swaro is. There's this initial profile creation process that is, it's like the biggest ask for the individual. is to go through this module it's gamified, it's user friendly, but it is an internal reflection process and observation, reflection of your current work and your motivations, your intrinsic motivations, like what are the causes that you are willing to contribute to, and there's more. It basically fills out what we call the Swaro 5, and then once that happens, that internal process, we then have the algorithm has what it needs to be able to do phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, which in very short, phase 1 is the matchmaking, the making explicitly clear of these impact amplification opportunities between sectors, between people. And so there's that making the match piece, there's geospatial mapping there's these, notifications. It's very personalized, it's very, very accessible. And then phase 2 is once the match has been made, this unified planning. So one of the, neutral facilitation being super important. So that's where we bring in third-party facilitators, but also we do have AI there that's smart to the algorithm. So getting to phase 3, which is the creation of a COPA page. And a COPA page is a collaboration page. And this is really where the traffic is driven to. It's where the work is, the collaborative efforts are able to actually come into fruition. And in this, just to kind of highlight features, there's embedded, M&E that's low cost, but also solicited by the people most affected by the work, that there's this invitation, there's a participation by anyone who is affected by it. But we have real-time feedback loop there, the M&E embedded, and then this resource matching and this kind of building of, I should say, like horizontal power in whether it's within a movement or between movements or, within a community. That takes place there. So anyway, that's very, very high level, but it's all, it's really about infrastructure and a vehicle that makes it possible for compassion to mobilize, and toward the achievement of climate and humanitarian solutions without depending on political or corporate agendas.
Oh, thank you, Alia. I think, well, for me, with that sense of our goal and what we can see emerging from the future, I can also see us using Swaro and our work and building it from different parts of the world. And I feel very honored to be part of this pre-conversation, and we can look back and say, do you remember when we spoke with Alia and heard her story? And so for that, thank you so much for sharing it and for bring it in and share your story. Maybe we can open up to support and help and dream Swaro. I know that some of you will be in Oxford next week. Alia will be also for the first time at the School World Forum. Reach out to her, right, and learn more about it, because my deepest feeling since I met you is that this is something that is going to be important for us, that is way bigger than you, because I've been in so many conversations about catalytic approaches and conversations of creating connections, and it feels that something is about to be born and in your work. But for that, I would like to open the mic or decide, because we have just a couple of minutes. Maybe some of you need to be back to the next call on time, and maybe we use the chance to open up if somebody wants to make a question, make a comment, and be invited to the volume 2 of this Swaro conversation with the Wasan community, and just express whatever comes out with that calling, even if it's more personal, about how it feels also to allow that own calling to be born. And feel free to share or to ask something to Alia. Kaylin, for your comment. Mhm.
I don't have a question, but I just wanted to thank you because this feels like so many of my conversations come back to how can we actually collaborate better and how can we kind of join up the puzzle pieces so we can see the full picture. And this feels like exactly the kind of thing that would be so helpful in my work. And I know a lot of other people would agree. So thank you so much for talking to us about it. Really excited for round two.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I can, anyone can interrupt me, but I think that you know, right now, and particularly within the US, but also globally, there is a corporate kind of lens being placed on things that really hinges on individuals being distracted and this notion of like the asses are masses or the masses are asses, you know, but it's this kind of like people being reduced down in to their kind of contribution to a profit. And I think that yeah, at this time, like Sandra, your the way that you brought us in here and like I think is a wise way to also move from like transition as well out of this conversation and just remembering that the power of your focus and the power of your attention and that a teacher recently said this, but like when the awareness becomes bigger than the energy, that's when things really start to transform. So
Yeah. So maybe we can do popcorn style one world. What do you take? And wish each other a good week. We can also stay if you guys want, but maybe I would love to hear all the voices to recognize us. And if you can turn on your camera when you say your last word, I will say really thank you, gratitude to Alia.
I need to leave, but thank you so much. Just filled with gratitude.
Yeah.
Enjoy your day. Wishing everyone well.
Thank you, Andrea.
Thanks, Alia, Sandra. Hope to see you next week at the Skull Forum. And Sandra, if you can share with us your poem too, it would be wonderful. Thanks.
Yes, I will. Yeah.
thank you, Sunny.
Thanks, Alia. I think the mental image I'm living with is some kind of like four-dimensional theory of change that is actually just a web of relationships, which I really, appreciated imagining from your description of what Swaro does and how it came about.
Thank you.
I'm just thinking about that last bit you said about awareness, when what happens when awareness is bigger than the energy.
Mm.
Thank you so much, Sandra and Alia. For me, today I really had a chance to contemplate like the importance of connection and streamlining those connections and removing all of the bottlenecks. Something that Alia mentioned about, you know, how people, how do I say it? Like they're using like different languages for the same things sometimes almost, and it made me think of a project that I was a part of, in which these artists from Canada, they invited several artists into one room, and we just listed words that we use all the time, and then we made an encyclopedia from those words that we use. But the thing is that we could each add a definition to whatever word we wanted. So, like something like philanthropy could have 6 definitions, and so I do think that something like this might be very important for philanthropy as a field, but also in encouraging different sectors to actually speak to each other in effective ways, because sometimes we're using the same language, but we're speaking with a different currency, with different values, and so I really wish you all the best and really thank you so much for this opportunity to learn about your work. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. I appreciate you coming back to that point, and I'll say too, like, yeah, I think the power of, there was this other piece to it, which I won't say the full story, but there's, Plato is kind of recognized for saying this in his, I think it's the Republic, but says that for any group to organize effectively together, they must first agree on the definitions that they have to the words that they're using commonly. And it's so basic, but it's so powerful to have common language. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, how can we test your soul?
Yeah, well, it's right now the algorithm have been tested in a very just beta way, and we have all of our team and wireframes in place, but we're fundraising to be able to actually build it, so that I could at this next session actually offer you the tool.
There is an interesting person for you to meet during Skull Forum, that's Sanjay Purohit. He's from the Center for Exponential Change in India. And it's really interesting collaboration people, and has developed lots of AI for impact. So I put my WhatsApp here in case you can try, because I will have some meetings with him. So I could try to connect you. I know he'll be busy, but anyway, we can try. Or I can send you his email after.
Yeah, I'll put you guys
That
in
would be awesome.
contact.
Thank you.
I promise to put you guys in contact.
What kind of are you looking? Are you still looking for fundraising contacts, or are you have you kind of sorted it?
No, I'm still looking. I mean, there are some threads that I'm following, but I'm fairly new to now, like, opening up to fundraising, but we have a for-profit side that's, able to take investment in that way, and then we have the nonprofit, which is really where I'd like to be focusing in, and so yeah, all types of partners are really possible. So any recommendations I'm grateful for. Yeah.
And maybe you can register your email, Alia. So for those that want to, I think there is in the email invitation. Yes, we have all your contacts and your LinkedIn to be shared. Yeah. Well, we'll keep you posted. I hope next time we can walk through the algorithm and maybe test it all together. And so, but thank you so much. Thank you everybody for coming and for investing this time with us. And thank you, Alia. I know she's based in Hawaii and has been traveling. That's a little bit, and it worked out great. So yeah, I wish you a beautiful week, and hope to you guys have a great. No, let's meet each other soon, and I'll make that connection, Celia, with you and Alia.
Sandra, if you
Yeah.
can stay 2 minutes, I'd like to talk to you a little bit.
Yes, of course.
Thank you so much, Sandra, and to everyone for your time and attention. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.
I'll call you via WhatsApp, okay?
Okay, perfect. Yeah, thank you.
Sorry, I don't want to disturb your.
No, not at all. Thank you so much. Okay.
Okay, just to
Looking
tell.
forward to meeting you.
To get news from Sandra here.
Yeah.
Okay. So I want to get updated on you because I know when you arrive at the school, you'll be crazy and tell me
No,
also
não, eu não vou, Célia. Estou aqui no México com Otto. Estou ajudando a fazer toda essa história do ELP, do Leadership Program. Tá muito legal.
Ai, que
Estou de
legal.
voluntária ainda, né? Mas estou amando, assim, estou fazendo, porque o programa é a terceira versão, começou Chile, não,
Aquele do
como foi?
Uruguai que a
Você foi
gente
para
do Uruguai que é de liderança
Uruguai, Chile e
sistêmica.
Argentina.
Tá, que eu fui no do Uruguai.
E agora está sendo feito os 3 modelos no mesmo tempo. São 300 pessoas, mas além disso, o outro está ficando, estamos fazendo uma mobilização do setor, 3 dias na cidade do México, então temos um café da manhã com empresários, depois para falar da transformação da filantropia, dessa história do filântropo 4.0. Então está sendo bem legal, temos um evento aberto para todo mundo, que já está super lotado, e uma masterclass, mas uma pena, porque caiu exatamente no mesmo momento e tem pessoas que não conseguiam vir, porque estão lá, e porque tem palestras. Por exemplo, a Laura do Collective Change Lab, ela vai para lá, mas depois vem para cá, né? Mas vou ficar
Mas você
muito
mudou de vez para o México? Você mudou de vez para o México?
Não, volto dia 14 para
Alemanha.
Para Alemanha. E aí estou ainda olhando o que eu quero fazer. Estou nessa história de sentir qual é a melhor versão de mim, onde eu quero estar, com quem eu quero trabalhar. Então tá ainda. E você, como está na Veja?
Então, eu estou saindo Beja. Eu vou para uma Visiting Fellowship em Oxford. Vou ficar lá 3 meses e meio. Eu falo que é unlearning, relaxing. Um amigo meu falou, ouvindo sussurros de futuro. Então, eu vou ficar lá 3 meses, assim, vai ser muito bom. Eu passo para o conselho do Beja, mas daí eu resolvi que eu queria fazer isso, porque eu tinha entrado naquela Visiting Fellowship, né? Mas tinha ido só uma vez para lá. Eu falei, eu aproveito agora ou não vai rolar, né? Então, eu falei, deixa me dar de presente, poder estudar em Oxford, ficar, sabe? Dar uma esvaziada. Então, eu vou ficar lá. Então, eu já fico depois da escola. Bom, né? Muito bom.
Que bom! E se você não pula um momentinho para Berlim?
Então, talvez até tenha uma vontadezinha, porque vai ter um evento que o Darius indicou, mas é que vai ser em maio, né? Puxa, eu vou estar acabando de chegar, daí já vou para Berlim, volto. Eu não sei, mas eu estou meio aberta, assim. Eu acho que ele falou que a semana
mas podemos inventar alguma coisa. Venha, vamos.
Eu estou assim, querendo primeiro chegar em Oxford, sabe? Para ver essa coisa que a Claire até me falou assim, Célia, pega 30% do dia só ler, daí vai numa palestra de ciência política, vai numa palestra de development, faz o curso. Então, eu estou inscrita em 2 cursos, do Paulo Savagé, um do Karim, mas depois eu quero meio que explorar, assim, sabe? Mas não queria sair já, sabe? Eu vou chegar em Oxford, daí eu vou para Londres, meu marido vai estar lá. Daí eu volto para assistir um curso do Paulo, daí eu vou tirar férias uma semana, daí eu volto. Então, eu falei que eu vou estar picando muito, eu queria, sabe, ficar um pouco...
Sim, é verdade. Uma relaxada, assim.
Tô achando bom, sabe, ficar assim, eu vou ficar lá na casa do Athletic House, que é maravilhosa, Então, estou me dando de presente, assim, sabe? Filho com
Ai, que
23 anos,
massa!
marido, vou sozinha, eu cancelei até a terapia. Eu falei, não, eu não sei nada. Assim.
Ai, que incrível, Célia!
Ai,
Ai, que bom, que bom! Ah,
estou
que
feliz.
bom!
E coragem também, né? De pegar e falar, ó, não é aqui o lugar nesse momento, então deixa eu sai. Então,
Hum,
achei melhor, assim. Então, eu implementei o Center for Exponential Change no Brasil, fiz a governança, mas estava muito assim, implementar. Daí eu falei, não, não é o meu lugar de
não, não.
criação, né? Então, tem
Ai,
que,
mas que
como
bom
você falou,
reconhecer, não é meu lugar. É, exatamente.
tem que sentir, né? É o que você falou, Sandra, sabe? Assim, sentir que a gente, que ninguém, não tem, são simplesmente não é alinhamento, né? Estão em outras energias, né? Mas
Uhum.
a gente sabe que a nossa energia é boa e que em algum lugar ela vai ter um fit bom. Então é tentar esse encaixe mesmo que você falou, né? Respeitando a sua intuição, sua vontade. Então eu tô que nem você,
Hum.
aí tava
Ai,
tentei.
que lindo! Ai, que bom. Bom, mas então vou te escrever, porque eu tô livre, então eu posso pular um dia lá porque eu fiquei com fome, a verdade, de não estar lá na escola. Mas está bem bonita essa história aqui da PI, porque estão trazendo cada vez mais é, sabedorias dos povos também originais, e tem
É
então
isso.
a teoria U está se misturando com práticas ancestrais, então tá muito bom, tá
Ele
bem bonito.
escreveu um livro novo, né, que ele vai lançar aqui no Brasil
Vai
até.
lançar agora em abril, tá? Bom, agora tá saindo já.
É.
Ele
Ah,
para
porque
trazer alguns.
A Janine está fazendo, acho que a versão português, né? E,
Sim,
mas
ela tá
ele
aqui,
escreveu um
chegou
livro.
hoje.
Ela chegou aí? Ah, é?
Uhum,
Ah, manda um beijo
chegou
para
hoje.
ela.
Essa é
A
uma
gente
equipe de
encontrou
mulheres bem
rapidinho.
legal.
Encontrei
É.
bem rapidinho com ela aqui no beijo, mas também já tô meio nessa fase também passando as coisas, tal. Então eu encontrei com ela bem rápido aqui, mas ela já sabe da minha novidade também, então tá bom.
Então é
Mas assim,
oficial, ok, tá.
já mandamos bastante mensagens e tal. E é isso, eu fico daí no conselho, mas daí eu vou para essa visiting fellowship, então isso é bom. As crianças estão bem, Sandra?
Tá tudo andando bem. Minhas crianças estão aqui. Viajei
Ah, estão
sozinha
aí?
com as duas crianças. Estou na
Ah,
casa
daí
dos meus
ficaram
pais e,
na casa dos
e
seus
daí
pais.
vamos todo mundo lá. Né? Sim, e volta dia
Ah,
3.
que bom.
Então é
E
isso
o
aí.
maridão ficou lá, tá? Ele
Fica
tá.
lá. Está em
Ele tá
França.
trabalhando
Está procurando trabalho na França, porque a ideia é a gente se mudar.
para a
Sair da
França.
Alemanha para ir para a França.
Ah, que
Bom, eu estou
bom.
aberta a tudo, Célia. Vem a vida.
Olha, Paris, se tem um lugar que eu quero sair, eu adoro Berlim e tal, mas um lugar que eu falei que eu vou durante o meu sabático é para Paris. Eu morei
Ah,
em Paris de 90 a 91. E eu falei, não, eu quero ir. Daí meu marido, não quero. Eu falei, eu quero ir sozinha para Paris. Porque Paris é demais, né? Tudo de bom, com aqueles
é mesmo. É
quero me
mesmo.
dar de presente uma semana em Paris, assim, tá vendo? O duro é que tá tão cara a Europa, né? Para o nosso dinheiro, tá muito caro, né? Então, mas eu falei,
Tá.
se eu não fizer isso
Ai,
agora,
agora sim, vai. E sabe com quem você pode se contactar com algumas pessoas em Paris? Mas a Natalie, do Black Fox Philanthropy, ela vai estar em Oxford, vai fazer até uma sessão disso. E ela tem um fellowship de mulheres trabalhando nessas infraestruturas e não tem muito contatos nem na América Latina. Vou te conectar. E ela mora em
ah,
Paris. Então,
que
pode ser
legal.
até uma. E ela é super bacana, você vai gostar muito. É
Que bom.
americana, mudou agora para Paris. Então, vou fazer essa conexão com a Alia e com a Natalie. Ótimo.
Legal. Você vai fazer falta em Oxford hein, esse ano.
Ai, sim. Tô
Mas
com um
ficar com
pouquinho de
o
inveja.
Otto, não, mas ficar com o Otto é maravilhoso, né? Ai,
Ai, vai ser
cara.
muito bom. Tá? A Florência Strass e Amigos da Vida estão lá. A Laura
Ah,
Pastorini. Vai ser bem, assim, a equipe está muito legal.
Ai, que bom, viu? Fico tão feliz. Eu quero depois ler mais sobre o Philanthropy 4.0. Quando a gente foi para o Uruguai, foi a primeira vez que ele elaborou, e eu falei, ele acabou, lembra? Ele acabou o fórum falando. E eu falei, gente, é aqui que ele tinha que ter
É isso.
começado, né? Porque para quem já
É isso.
estava ali naquela agenda, eu falava para a Janine, ele tinha que ter começado por esse final, porque eu acho que teve uma certa repetição ali. Ali, para mim, foi uau, era isso que eu tinha que. Eu vim para ouvir isso, assim, né? Então, eu perdi. Como o Beija não estava tão envolvido, eu dei uma perdida, assim. Então, mas agora eu volto
Não,
lá.
e a outra, na próxima, a outra nunca foi para as Cowork Farm. E no próximo ano, assim, uma dos meus sonhos de trazer, porque um monte de gente nem conhece a teoria UNE, esse trabalho. Eu acho que poderia ser super poderoso. E tem a Beth, que ela mora em Oxford. Muito óbvio. Porque a gente acha que estão todos conectados, mas não estão.
Uau, é porque ele expandiu de uma tal forma, você assume que todo mundo já sabe, né? Mas é verdade,
Não, eu
ainda
fui
tem
para
uma geração nova.
Não, nem a galera do Wasan Community conhece bem a teoria U, nem esse trabalho. Então, poderia ser uma coisa assim. Eu vou fazer um Wasan Session dos três ELPs da América Latina e dessa mistura da teoria U com a energia dos povos originais, da sabedoria local. E E aí falei com o Fábio, será que um download do que é a teoria seria legal? E aí ele falou, sim, ali quase ninguém do nosso grupo conhece.
Uau.
Interessante, não? Porque eu achava que todo mundo conhece, mas não.
Mas para já deixar na agenda do ano que vem, alguma coisa da agenda oficial também, né? Sara, você checou a Choca em Paris, na França?
Tinha contato, mas não. A Stephanie estava. Mas eu posso procurar conexão. Você não
Lá,
conhece ninguém?
eu nem sei. Eu vou tomar um café com a Maria Clara. Eu vou até escrever aqui para ela no sábado quem que é a pessoa da Choca França,
Em Paris.
Clara.
Me
Só
vou perguntar.
porque eu acho que é uma organização que teria bastante espaço, sabe, para você. Oi, Clara.
Ah, para mim. Ah, ok, ok.
Não, você tem interesse?
Claro. É tudo que seja. Tenho. Ai, que legal, Célia. Obrigada. Então, sabe, que a Alia estava tão nervosa, você não acredita, assim, ao nível de nervosismo. Eu vou ligar para ela, porque com certeza está me esperando. Mas, então, vou te procurar, vou tentar até ir para Oxford, quando você não esteja lá, se você não vem para Berlim,
Tá bom,
tá?
beleza, ótimo. Ó, tudo
Abraço,
de bom, querida. Abraços, boa energia lá com o Otto, com todo mundo. Então, assim, ó,
igualmente.
tá bom? Tudo de bom. Até mais.
Se cuida.
Tchau,
Até
beijo,
mais.
tchau.
Tchau, tchau.
Tchau.